Cardinal Wuerl, we're very blessed to have you. Thank you for spending some time with us here in Rome. We've just witnessed a moment in history and a very emotional moment for the Catholic Church. It's been a wild few days. It's the end of Thursday. What are some of the emotions in you right now?
Sebastian, there are probably two. One is more personal, having worked with this Pope before he was Pope, having known him for such a long time, and then having been assigned to my present assignment by him and made a cardinal by him. There's a lot of personal affection, and it all just bubbled over these past days. But just now, watching him say goodbye and knowing this is a goodbye. I'm not going to see him again. He's going into seclusion. There was a lot of personal emotion there. You can't help but love this Pope. He's such a beautiful, beautiful example of what a Christian is supposed to be and what a priest is supposed to be. So that was all a part of it. The second emotion, or the second impression, was what an extraordinary gift he is giving the Church. He has been saying all along, we need a new evangelization, we need to be able to move into the modern world in new ways. And then he simply said to the Church, I don't have the energy to do that. I think one of the reasons he didn't ask lots of people, he said he didn't do a lot of consultation, was because we would have all been saying, don't go, don't go. And he is listening to a much, much stronger voice. And so I couldn't help but think, this is a moment of history where he is saying, there are lots of things we can do differently.
Cardinal, as you and your brother cardinals gather here in Rome, everybody, the outside, knows that you're coming together to elect the next Pope. But talk to me about the support that your brother cardinals give you in a time like this, because I noticed in the last few days that many of the cardinals are very emotional about the Pope leaving. So what does it feel like to be with your brother cardinals here in Rome together?
Well, there is a strength you derive just by being with peers who are going through the exact same thing that you're going through. For example, today, after we came up from that meeting with the Pope, we all sat around the table and talked for a while, just letting each one know that we're all feeling this a lot. And but it's also preparation for the next step, which is going to be the election of a successor. One of the things that I keep reminding myself, and I think we all have to focus on this, that it's the office that truly counts. Peter was standing there today with the name Benedict, but years ago it was Peter with the name John Paul. And God willing, in a couple weeks, there will be Peter, same place, same faith, same duty, with a new name. And I think there's something very, very consoling in that, to know that we change. Individuals come and go as part of God's plan. We're making this lifelong pilgrimage. We hope we come and we go to heaven. That's what we hope. But in the meantime, there's a stability in the Church itself. And you know where you see that? Just look at the facade of St. Peter's Basilica. That facade says there's a permanence to the Church. But then the continuity. I think we spoke a little bit about that, the cardinals, when we got back to the college where we're staying, the seminary where we're staying, that there's a beauty in knowing this is bigger than any one person.
Right. It's interesting because the last few days, Benedict has really given us a teaching in the Petrine ministry. What have you learned about the office of the Petrine ministry throughout this decision, these last couple of weeks when we heard about this decision and then witnessed the Pope saying goodbye tonight?
Well, what makes this different than any other transition was, of course, his decision to actually step aside from it. When you talk about the Petrine ministry, the Petrine office, there's no better place to do this than St. Peter's, because Peter is buried under that high altar at St. Peter's. So it's not as if the continuity isn't even physical, that continuity that we talk about. But the real continuity is knowing that there's been a successor over and over and over again. And isn't that what's really important? Whoever steps out onto that loggia after the election is going to have his own face, his own personality, his own style. But the message will be Christ's message, Christ's gospel. It'll be Christ's church. And that's what really counts. I've been thinking so much of that. I think mainly because I didn't think I was going to be so affected emotionally with the departure of Benedict. And so I've had to keep saying to myself, but remember, it's Peter who stands in that loggia.
Right. If you look at the world today and you look at the church today, what do you think are some of the characteristics that will need to be present in the next Pope?
That really is a very thoughtful question. The characteristics. First and foremost, I'm just talking now about my appraisal, but I would want to see a Pope who you immediately recognize as a man of God. Now that, I say immediately recognize, presumably they're all men of God. But you want to be able to say to yourself, this is almost tangible in him. This person truly is a person of prayer, a person of spirituality. So that would be a characteristic I would want to see, because when everything else is all said and done, the last two popes that we have had that we're all familiar with, Benedict and John Paul, exuded this sense of closeness to God. They did it in different ways, but they exuded this closeness to God. That's why you almost wanted to touch them, as if I just touch his hand, I'll somehow be closer to God. That's one. The second, you want the chief shepherd to be a person committed to sharing the good news, but today, to do that aware that it's a very different world. I thought that was the genius of Pope Benedict. He summed up so quickly. He sized up and then summed up what the situation is. We are not reaching young people, young adults. Part of it is because their means of communication is so different than what the Church has relied on. Mm-hmm. That's why we have to be far more into what Salt and Light is doing. We have to be into video. We have to be into visual communications. We have to be present to events and then communicate them to people. And I think that's going to be a big part of the ministry of presence, because I'm going to look for that in the person I would like to see Pope. Someone who is committed not necessarily to making things work, because you can always get people to do that, but someone who is committed to the vision of my presence is what counts. And that presence doesn't have to be physical alone. It can be through all of these marvelous means of communication, video. I think that's going to be the future presence of the Pope throughout the world.
Very interesting. Talk for a moment about the importance of prayer during this whole process, because I think sometimes, I mean, you mentioned the video and stuff, sometimes we have a tendency to only look at it through the video, you know, and we forget maybe some of the deeper realities that are at work here. When you have a sense of the Church in this time, it's a time of deep prayer. Maybe a few comments on that.
Well, when I was getting ready to come to Rome for this, I said to all the office staff that were kind enough to gather, and we prayed together before I left, I said to them, in a way, it's like going on a super retreat, except the retreat master is going to be the Holy Spirit. So much time is blocked for prayer, quiet. In fact, when you go into the Sistine Chapel, you're not allowed to talk during this whole process, which is a long chunk of the day. But Mass, quiet time, prayer time, and I think that sets the frame of reference. You can't hear the Holy Spirit if there's too much noise in your life. And so the silence allows you to hear that stronger voice. And I think that's the key to a conclave, listening for the Spirit. I think we probably, before the conclave, we have this general congregation series, and that's where we get to talk among ourselves. And we get to know each other a little better. But you need both. You need the intellectual knowledge of who these, and then you need the affective awareness through the gift of the Spirit of what the Spirit is saying about these men.
It's been a very emotional couple days, especially saying goodbye to this Pope. What do you think your emotional state will be on the day that the next Pope walks out onto the center loggia?
I think probably I will be able to say at this point that intellectually I will say I'll be very, very happy because we have a Pope. Depending on who it is, I probably affectively will have another whole level of joy. But the most important thing is, and that's why the announcement is made the way it is, we have a Pope. That's what counts. We have a Pope. And he'll put on the white so that we all know this is Peter, this is the continuity. And then who it is, in a certain sense, becomes secondary. But if it's somebody I voted for, I'll be all the happier.
Thank you very much, Cardinal, and be sure of all of our prayers in this time for you and your brother cardinals. I know that the Church around the world it's a very exciting time, and we're all praying for you and thinking about you.
Well, thank you. Please, please pray. We need the prayers, and I'm so grateful for that pledge. Thank you, Sebastian.